Tossing Grenades at Windmills podcast.
Welcome to the Tossing Grenades at Windmills podcast. I'm Tom Ricks, and this is the last in the first part of my series called The Sins of Silicon Valley. I am ending it an episode short because I'm going to be starting a new series called How to Survive a Coup, given the recent turmoil in the Supreme Court and yet another line being crossed that we never thought we would see. Trump has literally nominated a theocrat to the Supreme Court, and she is very likely to be put on. But I didn't want to immediately start the other series since who knows what the future holds. And if nothing else for posterity, I felt I wanted to do at least one more episode in this series. Obviously, I will continue with, as I said, the second half where I talk about specific crimes by specific, and I do actually genuinely believe these are crimes. If we had a prosecutor that was willing to actually enforce the law, many of these tech companies would be broken up and many of its board members in chains, justifiably. But I've talked a lot about the crimes that they have committed or the crimes that they may commit, particularly in regards to Elon Musk. And I've even thought of crimes that I didn't mention. For example, Elon Musk is a libertarian and a fan of Robert Heinlein. If he gets a command of space, the idea of him being able to hurl an asteroid at Earth if anyone interferes with his Mars colony is frightening. But he's a good 10 years ahead of everyone else in terms of technology, maybe 5, but that's huge when it comes to space. So that's not what I want to talk about, however. What I want to talk about is a crime that I believe they will commit, but by proxy. And what I mean by that is I've mentioned that it is not the technology itself that is the problem. It is the culture of Silicon Valley and its leaders. And I stand by that. But nature abhors a vacuum. And there are 2 films / role-playing games that I want to bring up that will alliterate what they are doing that is such a problem in a nutshell. And that is Dune and Fading Suns. So I'll start with Dune, which is one of the most beloved sci-fi novels, soon to be movies of all time, by Frank Herbert, in which a future, eventually utopian robots enslave the human race to the point that humans don't have to do anything anymore and they're basically robot pets. And as a result of this, humans basically revolt against their robot masters, and there are no advanced computers in that universe. And it results in all kinds of interesting plot twists. But the thing I want to point out from that is that it is one of the most popular and early examples of a culture not just simply resisting a technology, but outright banning it. You cannot have AI in the Dune universe because of the former actions of their masters or their former masters. And one that I think is a little bit more interesting to talk about is Fading Suns, the role playing game, which, full disclosure, I am friends with the creators of this, and it's a great role playing game, and it's going to have a new edition soon. But I think the reason it's directly relevant to what I'm talking about is because in Fading Suns, there's basically 2 republics, right? The first republic is basically a crappy, corrupt, corporate piece of shit that goes to the stars and eventually falls apart, in part because of the creation of the Church of the Pan Creator, which is a kind of an amalgam of a lot of fictional religions that basically restores a little bit of magic and faith in everything in humanity. And, there's a kind of an interim period. And then there's this Second Republic that comes along, which is kind of like a little bit Star Wars and a little bit Star Trek. And it's basically a utopia. But the problem is like all utopias, it doesn't really have anything driving it, right? There's nothing specifically except let's all get rich and have a great time and party that holds it together. And so as a result, the church and a bunch of nobles in star space houses come together and they overthrow the Second Republic, and they basically create a new dark age with a triumvirate between the guilds and the guilds and the noble houses and the Church of the Pan Creator. And the church in particular maintains its power in part by regulating technology. And it gives nobles and the guilds a pass to help it maintain its own power. But if you're your average peasant, you don't have access to computers. You don't have access to advanced medicine. You don't have access to cybernetics. You don't even have access to the wrong kind of books. And the thing is that both Fading Suns and Dune are science fiction. But, I go back to Frankenstein and how that is 200, 300-year-old science fiction. And yet we are moving full speed, no holds barred, with no real checks on the ethical creation of digital intelligence. And so if we're going to ignore Frankenstein, we're probably going to ignore Dune and Fading Suns, right? So we have to understand that if we do not take action, then action will be taken for us by future generations. And what that means is that if we do not understand the need to shape our culture, to have a responsible way to maintain our curiosity and bring these wonderful advanced tools like the internet and smartphones and digital intelligence and space travel, all of these things are fantastic. I am very, very, very pro technology. In fact, I would actually argue that I'm a technological utopian. I believe that climate change and death and ignorance and so many chronic diseases can be solved by technology. But the trick is that if you do not understand and prepare for the impact it has on your culture, you are going to be shaped by them in ways that you never intend. There's a fascinating documentary on Netflix right now called The Social Dilemma that talks about how faster than anybody ever thought, we now have AI actively controlling over half the population of the planet by manipulating our minds through digital clicks or likes or the way it arranges the algorithm on Facebook or Twitter or YouTube or any number of different things, which are chained and shackled to the dark lords of Silicon Valley in a way that is sooner or later going to cause a revolt. In fact, frankly, I see it now. I look at popular media. I look at the reactions of my friends on social media. Everybody is fed up with Mark Zuckerberg and Jack and all of these other guys that are so arrogant. But because our society is currently so corrupt that it allows somebody like Trump to become president, that nobody knows what to do. And in the next series, I will explain some things we can do. And if you really want to know before then, listen to my series 11 Fixes for a Broken Everything. I list some things we can do right now. At some point, probably even before I do the second half, I'm going to do a series on how we can fix the fucking Constitution, which is a piece of shit, and have a society have a founding document that was written in the 21st century rather than the actual 18th century. Like the same century where pirates sailed the seven seas is when our Constitution was written. And it was a remarkable, amazing document for the time and has been the imprint for virtually every democratic government since. But it's old. It needs to be fixing, and it needs to be fixed. And frankly, it's got problems. But going back to the original point of this podcast, right? This series. If you do not take intelligent, proactive action, by the time society finally says enough of having my child manipulated by Mark Zuckerberg, enough of having Mark Zuckerberg kill thousands of people on the Mars colony because he wanted to build another wing and wasn't going to let anybody stand in his way. Enough of letting Mark Zuckerberg put Facebook ads in my brain because nobody thought to check him and make sure that we have intelligent application of the neural link, right? Enough of having Mark Zuckerberg and Elon Musk have their own little slave camps of duplicate brains in a digital prison that nobody even knew about for 50 years, and subjectively they were in it for 1,000. I mean, the horrors that these people are capable of inflicting goes on and on and on and on. And it's more than just capitalism, which is part of the problem. It's actually the kind of people that we let lead our societies. We need to have a vetting for sociopaths. And I bring this up in 11 Fixes for a Broken Everything. But when it comes to technology in particular, the kinds of people who decide how the technology is used need to have empathy. Empathy is the cornerstone of civilization itself. And if we have the tools and we have the technology, and we can invent even better technology to ensure that sociopaths and psychopaths do not run our society, and especially not the distribution and control of new technologies, which are disruptive on society of itself. We are very clever monkeys, right? We can figure this out, right? We can have advisory boards, non-governmental organizations, a department of federal technology monitoring that takes a new technology and gives it a grace period of, say, 5 years, 10 years, so you can still have your new internet. But after that, you start studying the hell out of it, right? Oh, this is causing depression in teenagers because you've got compulsive links? Well, let's shut that down for a while and figure it out, right? You can still have growth without unregulated, unchecked growth being funded by a money machine run by assholes, okay? And the fact of the matter is that if we don't do something about this, then at some point, the rampaging mob that tears the control chip out of their head that has been put there by Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg to mandatory feed ads while they're working with what's left of civilization goes insane and burns everything that is more advanced than a solar-powered calculator and sets up something that makes the French Revolution look tame by comparison, maybe we should put some safeguards in to keep that from happening. This isn't rocket science, folks. What I am calling for are societal and cultural checks on the ambition of monsters. The monster, if you understand Frankenstein, what Mary Shelley is really saying is that Frankenstein's monster is not the monster. The monster is Frankenstein, who, though he has the power to create life, has not the wisdom to know what to do with it, right? The wisdom of whether or not he should do anything with it. Or, more importantly, the wisdom of, even if he's going to do it, how to ensure that it is cared for and nurtured and made part of society and given a purpose and production, right? I keep hearing about all these guys wanting to create digital intelligence, right? But, you talk about Elon Musk in particular, the reason he wants the Neuralink is so we can keep up, right? He is a predator, and that's the way predators think. He is thinking that I want to be at the top of the food chain. So I need to make sure I'm as competitive with the digital intelligence as possible. And by the way, I want it working for me. But if I can't have it working for me, then damn if I'm not going to compete with it. And to be fair, when it comes to the survival of a species, there's nothing wrong with accelerating our own evolution. I'm very much in favor of allowing those that want to be transhuman to do so. I'm not a transhumanist myself, but I am very much in favor of free will and allowing a transhumanist to do whatever they feel that they want to do, as long as their child is free not to. The point is that right now we're at a nexus. We're at a nexus of so many possible futures, so many amazing or horrifying things coming down the pipeline. Nanotechnology, space travel, digital sapient intelligence, 3D printing, and I mean advanced 3D printing to the point that you can make anything out of almost seemingly thin air, fusion, unlimited batteries or near unlimited batteries with recyclable energy, terraforming, which we're very likely to get if we're ever going to fix the planet, and that will help not only this planet, but other planets in the solar system and likely beyond. We've got some things on the fringe of on the fringe of physics that might actually maybe allow even faster than light travel. And if you got faster than light travel, folks, you've got time travel. Who knows what the future can hold? What I can tell you is that the brighter futures, the Star Trek future versus RoboCop, requires responsibility. And it requires putting people in charge who deserve to be in charge and not letting the assholes that we have had in charge for, well, forever continue to be in charge. Because if we don't change our ways, if we don't create a means by which technology is responsibly monitored and allowed to grow, but at the same time checked, it will destroy us. Let me repeat that. If we do not take responsibility for our own wonderful and amazing creations, it will destroy us. And that might be because we destroy ourselves, or it might mean literally the things that we create, uplifted animals, sapient bacteria, sapient nanomachines, sapient digital intelligence, maybe an alliance of all of those put together. I think all of these things should exist. I think that we should allow the future to embrace whatever wants to be. But we must be responsible. And we must put more emphasis on our empathy and our morals than on our unchecked sociopathic curiosity, heedless of the cost. And mark my words, if we do not change, we will. This has been the Tossing Grenades at Windmills podcast. Buy my book, Have Name Will Travel, at Amazon and other markets. RedAnvilCreative.com contains all our podcasts. Copyright 2020.
To fight the forces of evil!